On this episode of AV Week, AVIXA says the AV industry is going to explode in the next 5 years as far as revenue. Draper and Barco get together and how other manufacturers can play well together. And Stampede looks for global distribution. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 372, recorded Friday, October 12th, 2018. Untapped Opportunities.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Kramer, AV Beyond the Box, and by Chief, the global leader in commercial AV mounting solutions.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio, visual, news, and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. The folks that we have gathered to talk about the news and information that we have gathered this week. First and foremost, YT from A10. Welcome, ma'am.
Hey, team. Thanks again for having us.
Absolutely. Also with us is Mr. Brock McGinnis from the Great North, and it's hockey season, Mr. McGinnis. So welcome to you, and go to your Maple Leafs.
It is hockey season. We have something to do every night now, which is a nice change after golf season. And I'm glad to be on the show, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. It's finally in St. Louis. It was 90 degrees on Monday. We're recording this on Friday, and it's finally fall. I believe the high this morning when I got up was 40. So that's for those of you not good at math, which is me, that's a 50-degree shift in about 4 days. So not too shabby. And last but not least, Mr. Tom LeBlanc from Commercial Integrator. Welcome, sir. Good to see you.
Hey, Tim. Good to be here.
All right. So actually, we'll start off with a story from Tom's publication. AVIXA released or did a presentation on some pro AV industry trends, and honestly, this is basically kind of asking you folks what you think of it. They were predicting an industry growth to $230 billion by 2023. That's only 5 years away, and that seems like a big jump from just over 200 million. Brock, I'm going to start with you on this. Is this something that makes sense to you as an integrator and somebody who's in the trenches in this every day? Does that number sound right to you? Does that make sense? And see a path where we can get there?
I never understand big numbers. I do understand that our industry is growing like crazy. We have more opportunities than we have hours in the day because people can't seem to have meetings now or get together socially or do anything without having some sort of a screen and a way to communicate visually. It's a fantastic time to be in the AV industry. So whether the numbers are correct or the percentages are correct, I think that the trend is spot on. I think that it applies across geographic markets. It's certainly not just in North America. It's not just in emerging markets. It's not just in China. It's happening everywhere, and it's about changes in how people interact with one another. We do this on screen all the time.
YT, I'm going to bring you on this because one of the things that I found interesting, and they during one of the PowerPoint presentations, they were showing what the different impacts that different regions have, and the one area was the Asia Pacific market, the Asia Pac. About every single kind of sub category, whether it's consumer spending, business growth, political climate, that area had a positive impact on the AV industry all across the board. How are you guys seeing growth in that area, and if so, what's driving some of that?
Yeah, sure. So, as you know, because we are a global company, so we have different regions. Go in China, Japan, Korea, etc. So we can see there are more and more needs and trends for the audio-visual requirement. But I have to say, because later we will probably talk about localization, but I'll say still for different regions, you are looking at different needs. and different characteristics. So, for example, let's say in US, our 4x4 8x8 video matrix, small scale video matrix, pretty popular doing the video wall. But if you're looking at China, especially in China, there are a lot of government opportunities, a lot of government projects. And if you look into China, you're going to see bigger scale of video matrix, like 64 by 64, 128 by 128, that kind of scale. So I'll say, and in Japan, again, for example, Japan, I'll say, for the technology-wise, they are always in front of the trend. So they are already looking at 8K, and not to mention Olympics. So there are different activities, events in different regions. So I'll say overall, echo back to what Brock just mentioned, all over the world, I think the business growth is growing. So for example, in US, just recently we have some opportunities on the restaurants. And you can see like the one that in Buffalo, that's something that's already there, already existing, and we are just upgrading their systems, their Pro AV systems. And the one we also have another one in Toronto where Brock is located. That one is brand new. So you can see that there are new stuff needed, and there are also something existing, and we're just going to upgrading them. And again, I think it's a good time for the Pro AV industry.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar, YT mentioned the fact that Japan is really betting heavy on the 8K, specifically for the Olympics. They've been broadcasting, the national broadcaster there in Japan has been broadcasting over the air in 8K for the last couple of years. As a test. Yeah. It's pretty remarkable, and that's where some of the manufacturers, the display manufacturers, are already kind of releasing some of their 8Ks. Tom, you guys mentioned in your article, actually, that you're the one that wrote it, about asking some of your readers where some of their revenue derives specifically from digital signage. I found it interesting that 6 to 10% was the second most picked response. The first most was little has changed, but you had quite a few saying that they had 10%, 20%, and more than 20%. When you're talking with integrators, is this a segment that they're seeing a lot of growth and possibly adding to this large chunk, or is there another vertical?
Yeah, I mean, I think digital signage is often very misrepresented in the market because we write about it a lot. You see it a lot at trade shows, and it's talked about quite a bit. But for most integration firms, the digital signage revenue is a very small chunk of the revenue pie. We've talked about this in some webinars recently. And I think the thing about the growth related to digital signage is that there are a lot of untapped opportunities when it comes to digital signage. That market has grown a lot from what it used to be. Like, it used to be kind of exclusive to customers who would be candidates for showmanship, I guess, like big digital signage displays, and maybe the retail or entertainment market. And now you're finding digital signage in corporate environments and obviously in hospitality and healthcare environments and all over education campuses. So there's a lot that's untapped when it comes to digital signage. And I think a lot of integrators have gotten really educated about digital signage over the last few years. And that's one of the reasons that the curve is a little bit wider with that category.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually were heading to New York in a couple of weeks for the annual New York Digital Signage Week, and you have Signage Expo and Infocom and ISE both have significant digital signage areas, not necessarily pavilions, but certainly areas where integrators can find out more.
Absolutely. And by the way, my colleague Adam Forziati wrote that article, not me. So I want to give credit where it's due.
No, absolutely. Yeah, if I misrespect, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, Adam. All right, our next story here comes from our friends over at SCN and AVNetwork.com. Draper is introducing or has introduced the smart trim for the Barco Unicy. If you're not familiar with Barco Unicy was announced a year ago, actually this month. And if we'll put a link on it, our colleagues over at Barco have posted the first in the wild pictures, I guess, of this. It was an installation at a Audi dealership in New York City. What it is, it's a trim kit. Honestly, it's a trim kit for the Barco Unicy platform, Barco Unicy platform, is a LED video wall, and this just kind of trims it out and makes it, pretty slick. It's a pretty slick installation, the one there in New York. YT, I want to start with you on this from a manufacturing standpoint. When partnerships like this, because that's in essence what you're talking about, one manufacturer making a product to make another manufacturer's product better. How do partnerships like this happen? How do they come to be?
Yeah, sure. So I'll say in this case, we're looking at the panel along with the mounting kit. But for us, I can start with like the control system. So, the control system, whenever we want to control devices through R232 or IR, there's got to be device drivers, device libraries, like the ASCII has codes of the R232 or the IR codes. So from a manufacturer's point of view, we want to make the system integrators feel easier to do business with and to do installation with. So for a control system, that's why we will partner with other vendors and other manufacturers for the control system device libraries, like projectors, like TVs or amplifiers, or even with supporting the network protocol. So I'll say from us, not just from APN US, even from our APN headquarters, for example, our control system, you can search for device libraries for different devices. And I'll say for this case, to be frank with you, I'm really looking forward to what Brock says, because Brock is the system integrator, how he looks at this. But I'll say it's a good thing because in a way of making the system integrators easier to integrate, but at the same time, hoping, it depends on their business model, but hope at the same time open the door for other integration as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, you and I have seen several of these over the last few years. Is this maybe a trend for the future? Instead of manufacturers trying to make everything, which we all know folks who try to make everything, not to call any of them out, but there are several out there that they make everything from soup to nuts, to steal an old advertising phrase. But are you seeing more and more of these partnerships where, one manufacturer is making a product, to sell, but it also helps and makes another manufacturer's product better?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it becomes a trend, because I think it's a good thing for the industry and I think for integration firms. But like YT, I'm anxious to hear Brock comment about that part of it. Tim, you and I were at an NEC event probably a month or two ago, where they were opening up, basically, vignette style showroom settings in their headquarters. And NEC is a company that I have talked to quite a bit about this concept of not being all things to all customers, but instead understanding what you're really good at and finding partners who are the right complement for a solution that you're trying to provide, and trying to make solutions a little bit more turnkey for integrators. NEC has done a good job, like in the control room, command and control area. They've partnered with Hyperwall, for instance, to provide more of a turnkey display/software video wall solution for command and control centers. They've had a few other partnerships. At one point, I don't know if they still are, but at one point they were partnered with T1V to blend the Think Hub into the NEC environment. This week, I think we posted a story about BrightSign being integrated, BrightSign digital signage players being integrated into MIMO monitors. So it's I don't know if it's a trend, but I am seeing a bit more of it lately, and I do hope that it continues, because it seems like it would be a really good thing for the integrator and for the customer for there to be more of a turnkey approach.
Well, and you're also letting people stay, this is a horrible phrase, but stay in their lane and work on and kind of focus on their own core competencies. BrightSign also is the underlying and the digital player in the Peerless kiosks also, I believe. So also they're not their first partnership. All right, Mr. McGinnis, both Tom and YT want to hear what you say, and I want to hear what you say. So what do you say?
I think it's a win-win. Barco identified they had a problem. Their Unicy sticks out. doesn't look very good from the side. They needed a solution, and they could either go and engage a bent metal company, and then put their markup on it and try and sell that to integrators, who then have to put another markup on it, and the product becomes too expensive. And we've seen this over and over again, from loudspeaker manufacturers trying to build their own brackets and rigging, through even some of the display manufacturers building their own, or having bracketry built for them by another company. NEC, I believe, they bundle brackets from another company with some of their product, and then it becomes too expensive. And we need paths to market. We don't mind dealing with two vendors if we can offer our customer an integrated solution that is lower cost and makes sense. Draper already knows how to do that. I think it's fantastic. From an overall perspective, though, I think manufacturers have to worry about getting in bed with one another if it excludes third and fourth parties. And this is the concern, and I think this is what YT has may have been alluding to. If you have Barco getting in bed with Draper on this particular product, does that mean that Christie then doesn't want to be associated with Draper, and they're going to start promoting Daylight or Stewart or some other brand of screen product or other thing? So you have to be careful, and I think that what Draper may be doing here is a lot what BrightSign has done with other manufacturers. They've said, hey, we're an accessory. We can make these for everybody. And currently, I think Planar is the only video wall manufacturer on the market that has a trim kit on their SKU. Westbury custom manufactures or has the metal bent and painted for us, for our clients, for Samsung and LG walls, because this is a common ask. They stick out from the wall. There's both kind of safety concerns about people running into the sides and catching their shoulders on sharper edges and corners, but for manufacturers to recognize that there's already expertise out there and tap into it, and for Draper to do tied selling. So Barco is promoting.
Hang on for a second. What is tied selling? I'm sorry, I'm not.
Well, tied selling meaning all the Barco reps are now promoting Draper. They're saying, "Hey, go have a look at what Draper has to offer." And I got to think that NEC and Planar and LG and Samsung will also be sending their SKUs to Draper and saying, "Hey, make us a similar kit." That makes us all think about Draper more often. And in different ways. It's not just a screen company, exactly as a Chief has done, or a Peerless has done with display manufacturers. They make mounts for everybody. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually, we'll see some of that in New York. NEC's 25th anniversary showcase is happening actually the week before New York Digital Signage Week. And my first trip to Digital Signage Week, it was remarkable to see Chief and Draper and Peerless in the same space of an NEC hosted event, right?
Right, but they're the plumbers of the digital signage world. It really doesn't matter, what's at the front end and what's at the back end. You still need a mount. You still need a kiosk. You still need something that a CMS for a system on chip. So BrightSign or other similar vendors will be dealing with all of those display manufacturers so that they're not left out in the cold.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, possibly last story here. We'll see how this one goes. It's from our friends over at AV Magazine. Stampede hosted an event for all of their vendors shortly after being acquired by Exertis and their parent company DTC. I want to read a quote from here, and YT, I want to start with you. From Jerry O'Keefe, the managing director of DCC. He says that this is, he emphasized the acquiring Stampede because, quote unquote, it had established the initial framework for a global distribution solution. We've spent probably the better part of the last year on and off talking about globalization in the AV industry. Everything from global AV partners, global AV integrators, folks who are opening offices around the globe, whether you have it's PSNI or the Global Alliance, or you have folks like Varex and AVISPL and HB Communications. And the list is getting quite long, actually, folks who are opening up overseas or non-US offices. But when it comes to that specific statement, that globalized distribution network, this is not a political statement, but in the US and China, they have some tariff issues right now. I'll just lay it out there like that as apolitical as I can. So there are certain cost issues with doing, bringing things into the States and then distribute it elsewhere. What can a manufacturer do to help kind of offset that, but also make sure that the integrator who's trying to deploy a global distribution network maintains a certain homogeny when it comes to cost as well as cost? I know it's a big word, but it's appropriate. But make sure that they're laying out the same quality, but also similar or if not identical cost structures around the globe.
All right. Thanks, Tim. I'll say the globalization, but actually the other word that we'll be thinking is localization. So I think being global, there's a very important key is to be localized, which is to know the local market. So for example, and I know we just mentioned about US and China, but also, for example, when we think about Europe, so again, it's like different regions have different characteristics. In Europe, it's where all the countries are so close to each other, and with it's really easy to have the products flow over the place. And so, for example, in Europe, we are facing a situation where you probably can get a cheaper product from Germany, but while your installation is probably in Northern Europe. So that's one thing that we're looking at. And again, for example, in Japan, besides the AK, another thing that we're looking at is their needs, and I'll probably have to say how picky they are about the quality. So they will look at the warranty, not just the price point, but the warranty, as well as advanced replacement. So I'll say for either the distributors or even the system integrators to go to global, I will recommend working with the partner who is being globalized already. So we can help. So people like us, ATEN, we can help with the different needs and different trends and different applications in different vertical markets. And I have to say, I'll say the pricing structure is pretty difficult because I don't think it's practical to ask a unified pricing structure. I think it's more practical to ask a localized pricing structures.
Okay. Brock, I was able to go down to the AVISPL SaaS event. It was their annual get together, and one of the things I have found in talking with some of the vendors there is AVISPL asked the same thing, right? This is what Stampede is aiming for. Is not new. And talking with some of the manufacturers, and we'll put a link to some of those interviews. We're talking with the gentleman from NEC. He said something similar to what kind of YT is aiming for. Said we can do it as much as possible currency exchange dependent, right? So understanding that the shipping and the warranties and stuff like that are important, but also is making sure that the customer is not paying a local tax or a localized tax, I guess. When it comes to doing, making sure that yes, you're still maintaining the quality, because you guys, Westbury has partnerships in
Right.
We're doing work both in Canada and Westbury's also done work outside of Canada. Making sure that you're still using those same quality products that you guys have had relationships with, how then can, I guess working with the manufacturers, make sure that, there's as little localization tax as possible? How do you manage that?
So cannabis becomes legal in Canada next week.
Why are we talking about pot?
because anybody who thinks that there will be global pricing on manufactured product has been sampling said substance. It's simply not possible. You've got 140 some countries in the world. They all have their own import duty structure. Currency aside, it costs different things for NEC to ship. An NEC TV in Canada is going to be $150 or $180 more expensive than it is in St. Louis because of the different distance in shipping from California, because of the import duties, and because of the tax structure. Every country has a different operating cost structure because people get paid different in Lagos than they do in New York. And it's just, it's not a feasible thing. And I love what YT said about localization. And you look at groups like PSNI and the Global Presence Alliance and multinational operators like AVISPL, they're looking for consistency of service. They're looking for consistency of product, but they know that they need to have feet on the street and local representation in order to best service a client, even if they're using the same TV, the same touch panel, the same processor. Those things are going to cost a different amount in every country. In Canada, we're quite accustomed to paying, we call a Canadian bump. A Shure microphone costs more money here than it does in Buffalo. We've gotten over that. It's, that's just fine because the costs of doing business are different here. The distribution channels and the cost of local service. We've done projects overseas, and we've found that traditionally, for example, AMX cost the same or less to use in Europe than it did in Canada or the United States. Crestron cost 30 or 40% more because of the way that Crestron was distributed internationally. And the price that we subcontracted a project in the UK to a contractor there who was paying as their dealer cost what we considered list price on this continent because of Crestron's legacy distribution arrangement. I believe that's changed now. I think that they've gotten over that, and it is much more unified, but it's irrational to think that you can sell something, and prices in the UK are not what prices are in the US, nor prices in Hong Kong, nor prices in Tokyo. And I don't believe that a local market expects that to be. People who are selling from the US to England would love that to be the case. And if the head office is in New York and they're asking why is the price so much more expensive in London or so much less expensive in Hong Kong, it's that US perspective that is out of line. The people in the UK, they know they pay more for certain things. The people in Hong Kong know that they pay less and get a great deal. So it's the way of the world. The only thing that costs the same from place to place to place is a Big Mac.
I don't even want to theorize why that is.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. LeBlanc, YT and Brock have both talked about this. Is this a hindrance then, or do you think this helps the ever-growing globalization of AV integrators?
Well, I mean, I think from every time I've spoken to an integration firm that has, a really strong interest in, pursuing the global market, I think the smart ones recognize that there's a cost of doing business related to adapting to whatever the unique variables and circumstances are in the markets that they're trying to pursue. And sometimes that's, elevated costs. Sometimes it's cultural differences. Sometimes it's how their sales tactics won't resonate with the particular market that they're pursuing. But I mean, I hate to say it, but I think it kind of falls on the dealer or the integrator to be responsible for the variables as they're pursuing various global markets.
Well, and some of that is also kind of like what Brock said, is educating yourself. If he's right and the folks in the UK or Canada know that they pay more, okay, then the integrator in St. Louis should educate themselves and realize, okay, that my proposal has to be more.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
We act as an integrator for a number of U.S. companies and one UK company that are doing business for their clients in Canada. And so I have a pretty well-established explanation for why things are different. LG has a subsidiary in Canada that adds a layer of cost, as does Sharp, as does Panasonic, as does Samsung. And so those TVs are not going to be what they cost in St. Louis. And there are a whole bunch of other things across the board that, and it is about educating the customer. And when the customer understands, or the other integrators understand, this is not a barrier. And manufacturers are not in business to make life simple for their distributors. That's what their distributors do in a localized environment, and I'm sure that YT's company A10 does the same thing. They either have a local infrastructure that deals with local requirements, or they use distributors that handle that on their behalf.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that is going to do it for us. Thank you all so much for joining us. YT Lang from A10. Thank you, ma'am. How do people find you and or A10?
You can find us through our website, www.a10.com, and we are pretty active on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook as well.
All right, very good. Mr. Tom LeBlanc, thank you, sir. How do people find you or Commercial Integrator?
They find me on commercialintegrator.com, mytechdecisions.com, and on Twitter at comintegrator.
I would just like to point out for those of you not watching the video that Mr. LeBlanc just put on his Boston Red Sox hat. So, are they still playing baseball? I mean, I'm just confused.
Well, they will be until they face Justin Verlander tomorrow night.
All right. I'm in St. Louis. It's hockey and football season here. So, all right, Mr. McGinnis, thank you, sir. How do people find you or Westbury National?
Westbury is westbury.com, and I can be reached most often on Twitter, Brock McGinnis. My name is also my Twitter handle. Pleasure as always to be here, Tim.
I appreciate it. For me, don't follow me because I mentioned it's hockey and football season, so that's what I'm going to be yakking about. But go by the website. Lots of really fine people. It's been an awful lot of hard work on it. It's AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others, including our weekly residential AV show called AVWeek, hosted by my buddy Matt Scott. A bunch of monthlies and actually one that just posted looking at marketing for next year, actually planning for marketing for next year. Our Don Mead hosts our AV social show. Also, while you're there, check out our underwriter section. These are the folks who help us financially, help us bring you AVWeek and New York Digital Signage Week and CDA a couple months ago, and ISE in just a few short months. So all that and more at AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.